Once upon a scorching summer day, I found myself standing in line at the famous Sweet Delights ice cream stand in the heart of New York City. The heat was unbearable, and the line seemed to stretch for miles. My name is Emma, a 25-year-old woman who had recently moved to the city to pursue my dreams of becoming a writer. The hustle and bustle of the city always fascinated me, but dealing with entitled people was not something I anticipated. Little did I know that this day at the ice cream stand would introduce me to an infuriating character named Karen, who could easily be the star of Our Entitled People. As I finally reached the front of the line, relief washed over me. But just as I was about to order my much-needed ice cream cone, a shrill voice cut through the air. It was Karen, accompanied by her 5-year-old son, Timmy. "I can't believe we have to wait in this ridiculous line," Karen exclaimed, huffing loudly. She was a woman in her late 30s, with a perfectly styled bob and an air of entitlement that surrounded her like a cloud. Timmy clung to her leg, eyes wide with anticipation. Trying my best to keep my cool, I turned to Karen and said, "Well, it is a popular ice cream stand, and everyone here seems to be patiently waiting their turn." Karen's eyes narrowed, and her face flushed with anger. "Who asked for your opinion?" she snapped, looking me up and down. "You should let us cut in line. My precious Timmy deserves his ice cream first." I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her audacity. "Oh, I didn't realize Timmy's ice cream needs were more important than everyone else's. My bad." Karen's face turned red, and she seemed to have lost all sense of reason. She stepped forward, pointing her finger at me. "You think you're so clever, huh? Just wait until I tell your manager about this disrespectful behavior." I couldn't help but smirk. "Good luck with that. I'm not a manager. I'm just a regular customer, and besides, I don't think your complaint will carry much weight when you're trying to cut in line." As Karen continued to argue and complain, the line around us grew restless. People started chiming in, supporting my point of view. Karen, frustrated by the lack of sympathy, began to lose her temper completely. In a fit of rage, Karen lunged toward me, attempting to physically attack me, but Karma had other plans for her. As she lunged forward, she slipped on a stray ice cream cone, crashing onto the ground with a resounding thud. The entire crowd erupted in laughter. Lying on the ground, Karen seethed with anger, while I couldn't help but relish in the moment. Revenge was sweet, even if it was served with a side of melted ice cream. As Karen stormed off, covered in sticky ice cream residue, I couldn't resist a parting shot. "Watch your step next time, Karen. Maybe you should have been more concerned about your own actions rather than everyone else's." The crowd cheered, applauding my quick wit and Karen's defeat. And as I finally savored my long-awaited ice cream cone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Sometimes entitled people like Karen needed a taste of their own medicine. So, dear readers of Our Entitled People, remember that entitled people may try to push their way through, but there will always be someone ready to put them in their place. I, 17 male, passed from 10th with a great percentage, and my parents decided to throw a party for my friends and close relatives and cousins. It was at home only. Many cousins, grandparents, best friends, uncle, aunts, all were there. Now I'm a person you would call fashion freak and like to keep a wide range of watches, accessories, and shoes to match with my clothes. My accessories, except my watches, are not that expensive, but my watches are. They are quite expensive for someone my age and even older than me, but most of them are gifts and prizes from tournaments I play. My uncle, entitled uncle, is not really well off as he decided to have a large family, and by that I mean 8 kids, 6 girls, 2 boys. He lives in an area with high cost of living and often asks for cash from his brothers and will never return but not really large amounts. Now, most of his kids are younger than me and quite well behaved, but the oldest 2, 18 male, 16 female, I will refer to them as EK, are total crazy people. I didn't want to invite those 2 but had to. So, now getting to the main part during the party, my older cousin EK asks me where the washroom is. This was odd because this wasn't the first time he was there, but I told him the directions. My room was in the way to the bathroom. I live in my room and have all my things out, watches, chains, rings, and shoes, etc., as I am the only kid and no one usually enters anybody's room since me and my parents are always out for studies and work. After some time, I saw my uncle and smaller EK also going towards that direction. This was extremely odd, and I went behind them, and I saw what I never wanted to. They entered my room and were going through my stuff. I took my phone out and started recording from a small opening in my door, and went with the party as nothing happened. After a few hours, when it was only the immediate family all my friends had left, I noticed those three getting really uncomfortable and quiet and seemed like they wanted to leave early for obvious reasons. And they started to gather their things. When I stopped them and asked them to return my things or I will manage a chaos, they, like any foolish person, started to act like they knew nothing and accused me of lying. I showed them the recording and said that I had already sent it to everyone there and just needed to switch on Wi-Fi for it to get uploaded. And still, they lied, so I did what a bad person would do. I sent everyone the video, and after a few minutes there was crying, shouting, cursing, and whatnot. They still refused to give them back, saying that they needed them and we could just throw a few bundles of notes and get them back. While all this chaos, I had already seen if they had anything in their jeans pocket, and no, they were empty. No, I didn't check the pockets by opening them, but they would have been visible like a bulge since they are bulky watches. So the only place people they could have been was my EK sister's handbag. I didn't want to buy it. I had to snatch it and drop all the stuff on the floor, and there they were, almost $12,000 worth of accessories like watches, rings, bracelets, and chains. She got mad and tried to gather stuff around, but her younger sister stopped her. She has become one of my favorites since then. I quickly picked up all my stuff and went to keep them in my room and locked the room from outside. Those three by now had become mad and were crying and left the house immediately with the rest of the family. Aunt had been apologizing, but it wasn't her fault, so I can't accept that and politely told her, and she respected my choice. Surprisingly, all my being on my side, my mother had been saying that I was wrong to snatch her purse and take out all the stuff and go through it as girls has personal stuff. I think I didn't do anything wrong as my stuff was more precious to me than their dignity in the family, but still was I in the wrong? At the time, I was an apprentice in a big rig workshop. We had an audit come through, so the place had to be cleaned up to a standard it never upheld the other 364 days of the year because no one cleaned after themselves. It took me and my fellow apprentices 3 whole days. On the last day, my task was to tidy up around the gates, meaning sweeping and removing the trash in the corners. There were 24 of them, each 5 meters tall, sectioned into something like 30 individual window panels. There were cobwebs on them, and I briefly wondered if I should remove them. I decided not to, because the whole place was full of cobwebs, and we had not been asked to remove them anywhere else. Also, it would have taken me quite a bit of time to do that, and I figured there were probably more important things to be done still. I was wrong. Half an hour before closing, the guy responsible for us apprentices came up to me and asked why I hadn't removed the cobwebs. I explained and said I could still grab a broom and do it. He wanted me to use the vacuum cleaner instead and make sure all the panels were spotless. Now, my work pays overtime. I had nothing going on that afternoon, so I grabbed the vacuum, a ladder, an extension cord, and some rags and window cleaner and got to work. An hour after closing, I was about halfway done when the workshop manager came up to me and sort of awkwardly told me he had had a talk with the aforementioned guy and I could go home. I smiled at him broadly and said I could never leave my job only halfway finished. I cleaned for another 1.5 hours. At the end of the month, I happily pocketed the extra 2.5 hours of pay and was never asked to clean cobwebs ever again. Also, the guys doing the audit spent a whopping 5 minutes inside the workshop and the rest of their time going through the books, so I doubt they would have even noticed. So this wasn't me, but happened at one of the retail cell phone stores I manage. We put out demo phones for customers to play with. The funny thing about these phones is that they are locked, cannot be used, and have no real value. From time to time, a dumb thief will come in the stores and take one of these phones. Today was one of those times. This particular store is usually slow, so having 1 or 2 employees working at a time is normal. Today, one was at lunch, so only one employee was in the store, and in walks 2 guys. One is engaging with the employee, asking questions, acting like an interested buyer. The second is looking at the demo phones, but in reality is taking it off the security stand. The employee notices the guy has removed the demo phone from the security device and turns to look at him. The thief makes a run towards the door, and unbelievably, the employee tackles the thief. The two roll around, exchanging blows outside the store. It was a completely crazy scene. The good part about all this is that the thief got away with the phone, but in the process of wrestling with the employee, dropped his car keys out of his pocket. The employee picked up the car keys and went inside the store, locked the door, and called the police. To keep a longer story short, the cops came and towed the thief's 2016 Honda Accord. So he got a play phone that is as good as worthless and lost a good car. Also, the cops were easily able to identify the thief and put a warrant out for his arrest. This is an old story I had forgotten about until just now, the nostalgia. It happened when I was in middle school, about 2010. A bit of context. I live in an old rural town, not in the U.S. The only middle school in this town used to be a nursery, the kind where plants and trees are grown or sold, not a medical nursery. Most of the trees weren't cut down when the place became a school, and a few of them were fruit trees, 3 or 4 of them were mango trees. Kids loved taking them home by the bunches to enjoy with our families or eating them during lunch and breaks. Occasionally, some kids would try throwing rocks or sticks at the tree branches to make some mangoes fall. One of the teachers didn't like this. Understandably, throwing rocks could be dangerous, but nobody was throwing them at each other, and they were careful looking around for any people passing by as to not hurt anyone. The most logical thing to do would have been to forbid students from throwing things at trees, but instead, the school passed a rule that any students caught picking up mangoes, whether they be on the floor or trying to get them from the trees, would get in trouble or even face suspension. We all thought it was a dumb idea, but me and a few other students could smell the eventual disaster from a mile away, so nobody protested and everyone at school agreed to comply, even the kids who were known to be rebellious. Well, about a month or so later, the whole school was absolutely stinking of rotten mangoes, and for those of you who don't know, mango season usually peaks during early spring and late summer. Plus, in the state we're in, rainy season hits in summer. So imagine old, rotting mangoes in muddy water puddles that sit for days at a time in the summer heat. Not a good combination of smells. The teachers by that point told us that if we see a mango in good condition to be eaten, we could pick them up. But we couldn't possibly break the new rule that was imposed by our respectable teacher. We must obey like the good students we are. The school had to pay a cleanup crew to dump all the rubbish, and some of the parents, my mom included, complained about the wastefulness of perfectly edible fruit. The next school year, we were all enjoying delicious mangonadas, which is mango-flavored ice pop with a spicy sweet sauce. Under the lovely shade and those good old summer breezes, said ice pops were made and sold by a classmates. The teacher that had originally started the complaints was a loyal customer.